In 1968, an American researcher named John Calhoun built a perfect world for mice and watched every single one of them die. 8 mice in a metal universe with unlimited food, unlimited water, no predators, no disease, and enough space for 4,000. Within 5 years, every mouse in the colony was dead. The experiment was called Universe 25, and for the last half-century it has been used as a parable for the collapse of civilization. Abundance kills, comfort destroys. The mice had too much, and so they invented their own extinction. You have heard this story before.
What you have not heard is that 10 years later, on the other side of the continent, a different researcher built a different kind of paradise for a different kind of rodent, and the result was the exact opposite. The animals did not collapse, they flourished. They refused the drug that, in every previous experiment, had killed them. They lived long, full, healthy lives. The two experiments together explain something that the famous one alone does not. The collapse Calhoun observed was never about abundance. It was about what kind of abundance. And the rival study, which almost nobody remembers, contains the part of the lesson that actually applies to us. Calhoun's mouse universe was a metal box about 2.5 meters wide, designed in the late 1960s at the National Institute of Mental Health. 16 vertical levels of cages, endless food, endless water, climate-controlled. He started with 4 pairs of mice. By the 400th day, there were over 2,000. Then the population stopped growing. By day 560, the breakdown started. Mothers abandoned their pups, then began killing them. Males formed gangs and attacked weaker males for no reason. A class of mice that Calhoun called the beautiful ones withdrew completely from social life, groomed obsessively, ate, slept, and reproduced with no one. By 1973, every mouse was dead. Calhoun published his finding and used the word behavioral sink to describe what he had seen. The mice had everything they could possibly want, and yet their society had collapsed under its own weight. Universe 25 became the most famous animal experiment of the 20th century. It has been cited in architecture, in urban planning, in conservative political theory, in essays about the welfare state, in arguments about why cities make us sick. The standard interpretation was simple. Too much comfort breaks a species. Paradise itself is the poison. But there is a piece of the story that almost never gets told. The mice in Universe 25 did not just have unlimited food and water. They had no work to do, no problems to solve, no choices that mattered. The space they lived in was abundant in resources but completely empty of purpose. There was nothing to do. There was nothing to be. There was no role a young mouse could grow into that was different from the role of any other mouse. Calhoun himself, in papers most people never read, said this was the actual lesson. The collapse, he wrote, was not caused by density or resources. It was caused by the loss of meaningful roles. The mice had no behavioral niches left to fill. He used a phrase that almost nobody quotes when they talk about Universe 25. He called the missing ingredient ideational generativity, the capacity to find new purposes to live for. The mice had paradise. They did not have anything to do inside of it, and without that, abundance turned into a trap. Which brings us to the experiment nobody talks about. In the late 1970s, a Canadian psychologist named Bruce Alexander at Simon Fraser University in British Columbia was looking at the standard experimental setup used to study drug addiction in rats. Researchers would put a single rat in a small metal cage with 2 water bottles. One was plain water. The other was laced with morphine or heroin. The rat, almost without exception, would drink the drugged water until it died. For decades, this had been treated as proof that opiates were chemically irresistible. Alexander noticed something different. The rats were always alone. They were always in small, empty cages. They had nothing else to do. So he built a different setup. He called it Rat Park. It was about 200 times the size of a standard lab cage. It contained 16 to 20 rats of both sexes. There was food, there were tin cans to hide in, there were wheels to run on, there were things to climb, there were other rats to play with and mate with and form social bonds with. There was, in other words, something to do. And he ran the same morphine experiment. The rats in the standard isolated cages drank the drugged water at the same rates as in every previous study.
with the caged males drinking up to 19 times more morphine than the rat park males. The rats in Rat Park refused it. They would sample it occasionally, taste the bitterness, and walk away. The same chemical, the same dose, the same species. Different environment, completely different outcome. Alexander published the results between 1978 and 1981. Like Calhoun, he became famous. Like Calhoun, his finding was simplified in the retelling. The popular version of Rat Park is that connection is the opposite of addiction, that social bonds save you. That is part of it, but it is not all of it. What Rat Park actually showed, when you read Alexander's own papers, is that the rats did not just need each other. They needed something to do. The cans to hide in, the wheels to run on, the space to chase and explore and build social hierarchies. They needed roles. They needed niches. They needed work that meant something inside their tiny world. The difference between Calhoun's universe and Alexander's was not size or abundance or even social contact. Calhoun's mice had each other too. The difference was that Rat Park gave its rats something to do with their lives, and Universe 25 did not. Abundance with purpose produces flourishing. Abundance without purpose produces collapse. The two experiments are the same experiment, run in opposite directions. And the lesson the world remembers from Calhoun, that comfort itself is dangerous, is wrong. Comfort without something to live for is dangerous. The mice did not die because they had too much. They died because they had nothing to do with what they had. The rats in Rat Park had just as much, and they walked past the morphine. There is a version of this every human being already knows. You have probably met both kinds of people. The ones who have everything and are quietly destroying themselves with it, and the ones who have very little and are intensely, visibly alive. The mice and the rats already proved which condition is the real one. We just keep telling the wrong half of the story.